From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you all for joining us here. This is another in our continuing series of briefings that we provide about things that are related to NDIP or digital preservation. And we've been doing this for several years now. And if you go to the digitalpreservation.gov website, you can see webcasts, or not webcasts, but video of each one of those presentations. And we have another one scheduled after today on June 7th, noon, same place, where we can welcome Saeed Chowdhury, who is the director of the Johns Hopkins University Digital Research and Curation Center. I'd also like to let you know or remind all of you that we have Personal Archiving Day coming up on May 10th, in Mumford, next Monday, in which, in fact, some of you will be involved in that and providing some information to the public about how they can take care of their digital personal materials and their non-digital personal materials. And all of you, of course, are welcome to attend. We also, speaking of personal archiving, we have just expanded and extended our guidance on personal archiving on our digitalpreservation.gov website. If you haven't been there in a while, I suggest you check it out. That's actually been one of the more popular parts of our website over a long period of time. And the material there was fairly brief. We've expanded it in line with public interest, and we hope to keep working on it and refining it as time moves along. So, given this focus on personal archiving, we really wanted to bring a distinguished speaker who could talk about some interesting aspect, an interesting angle on the whole personal archiving thing. And we are very pleased and honored that Dr. Gordon Bell from Microsoft Research has agreed to be with us today to talk about personal archiving. Since 1998, Dr. Bell has been working on MyLifeBits, which is a system, and I hope I get it right here, to digitally store everything documenting a person's life, including books, personal records, photos, video, and more. Dr. Bell has a very long list of awards and honors. I'll just mention a couple of them. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, a member of the National Academy of Engineering, National Academy of Science, and on. But I should also say that he has had a long and distinguished career in industry, and I was very interested to learn that he was known as the VAX man in the mid-70s because he oversaw development of the VAX computer, which those of you who are beyond a certain age will certainly remember the VAX. I do. It was a hugely successful product. Now, it's clear that most of us don't know what the future is going to bring beyond death and taxes, but those of us in cultural heritage institutions can count on the future bringing an ever-increasing volume of digital material. And a good bit of that is going to be personal. Personally generated, personally maintained, and then handed over. So we're very eager to hear what our distinguished guest will be able to teach us about what we should look forward to and what we need to do. Please welcome Gordon Bell.
I'm not sure teach is the right word here. It's more the operative word is that I'm here to help expand the problem to something which we're not solving now, to an even bigger problem that in the future. So I've got, in my case, it's really what happens when you have to preserve these digital lives. How many bits, when instead of people arriving with boxes of documents, they're going to be arriving with so many hard drives and some URLs, and now how do you preserve all of those people? And you know, if you're preserving the 20th century person where they arrive with a box of people, they're really, you can probably cram that into maybe 10 to 100 gigabytes, depending on how much resolution you do, because most of them don't have a lot of video. Video, of course, is what takes all the space up. And what my claim is that aren't these people going to be forgotten because they're arriving with things that in fact are analog and that are difficult to access. And so Gresham's law will take effect, which is the people who, like me, arrive with their bits intact, if that is assuming anybody wants those bits, can merely search them, and searching is getting all the better, so you'll be able to do a lot by not having to get your fingers on those dirty bits, the old nasty early analog bits. So I think to you, here the challenge is you're going to be having the 21st century people, and what's intriguing is sort of which lives, and the way, in fact, one of the characterizations I have of my life stuff is really getting a model for how you characterize lives, a life, and I ended up using a thing called that I discovered after about 10 years after the psychologist had discovered it, and that is that you have these autobiographical memories, and that turns out to be one of the probably the nicest organizing principles to be able to understand somebody. And so you've got which lives do you preserve, and I've got some examples of a bunch of the NIH and other libraries holding personal lives. How deep do you go, and then how big? I mean, as an institution, you have the problem of how big is your lifeboat in terms of preserving all these people. I think that's a very serious kind of concern, and in a way, or how do you, and one of the things ought to be to how do you get other people to build lifeboats out there, because you can't, you know, one boat's not going to save them all. And then we've got these people that are half-breeds that are coming in with, like Salman Rushdie, that has his analog stuff, and then also his, Emory now has his 5 MacBooks and hard drive, and then basically preserving everybody. And so it's really what's the various roles that we have here. What I'll do is sort of talk about my MyLifeBits, which is an experience with my early digital lives. And, you know, initially I was accused of being very narcissistic, as one might expect. But it actually evolved from trying to go paperless. It evolved from a friend of mine wanting to do some experiments in books, and had a number, and then it became a project that really was aimed at realizing, at least in my model of as a computer guy, it's really an inevitable quest for what a personal computer is or should be. And then you want to know how much of your life was recorded, and that's everything, you know, from the easy parts to the mundane, and then being able to capture every conversation and everything you hear and see. And then I think the implications again is who and what lifetime periods you capture for life support, and what are the events, and just something, and how is it, and particularly is every digital life worth saving. And I think to you, and we talked this morning, we really got into the nub of this. I wrote a paper, I think maybe 10 years ago, or maybe not quite that long ago, on a thing called Dear Appy, and it was, will you support me when I grow older? Signed, lost data. And that's something undoubtedly everybody here's experienced. Having lost a format, you know, we experienced it right here today with trying to get a particular thing to play on a I brought a 2007 format, and it was you have a 2003 PowerPoint on here, knowing, and I knew full well that it was a screw up on my part, but. And then also there's the other thing, which is in fact what I call the digital landfill problem, that I think lives won't disappear. And that's that's a warning to people who are blogging. I'm not I think we call ourselves, or we didn't do it, but we're called life loggers. But there are bloggers, and that's a different animal, because in fact that, which is in some cases to put as much of your life, as much of your cross-section in the public world as possible, and we frankly do not advocate that at all. I don't like to have a lot of cross-section out there because of all of the prejudice and the like. So all of this is really possible because of three streams of technology leading to total recall, and that's what we just have a book now that's out in last September on one aspect of this. And so there's three streams that have really done that. First off, there's the recording. So we've got more things to use as recorders. So we can basically record more about ourselves than we maybe ever should, or quote, need. The other thing is that this massive amount of storage, so that in fact we will see terabytes in our pockets and petabytes in our home within the next decades. And already we have an exabyte. One of our data centers can achieve an exabyte in terms of what it stores, and then of course a lot overall. I thought I would just get to this. We had a discussion about this morning, and that is, how do you store something? I really believe that our community, the computer community, needs to think that we're storing things forever. It should just flat say, that's our goal. We need to think that those are the numbers we should think about. And I'll say, even 5 years ago, I would have never believed I would have ever seen computers like I'm seeing today. And that's fairly unusual for me to say, that I couldn't even envision this. And this is, in fact, one of our data centers, and I think ours is probably, this maybe small compared to some of the others, Google's, but basically that this will, one of these little containers there holds 3 petabytes, and you have 400 of them. So, in fact, in Chicago, this could be up to over an exabyte of information, and they take a lot of power. But in fact, it is by having such scale, you actually end up with fairly low costs. So I thought I would sort of get up front, and in fact, that's really the challenge on the storage. But it's enabled by storage. Now you can go and get some expensive storage. Now, how do you like this comment? You can store your life forever. That's a wild claim. I mean, putting forever on anything is, you know, I just even can't imagine. I mean, I think that's a, I don't think that's a bargain. I think it's a bargain, but my guess is that the company will have gone out of business before anyone has to call it in. I mean, who's going to be around, or in fact, in a lot of cases, who cares about that? And accompanied with that, it was DNA storage, and I couldn't quite tell whether that was a sample of your DNA or just some encoding, because a digital DNA is a really high fidelity one. It's a terabyte. A normal one is maybe 2 or 3 gigabytes. It's compressed down. So I wasn't quite sure what they had in mind there. And then the third leg of this, beyond being able to do it, being able to store it, is actually the thing that I discovered after I'd stored a lot of things, was actually being able to get it back. Being able to have it be of any utility to anybody. And that was our third aspect. And so total recall is inevitable. Here I thought I would show a few things of, this is kind of a lot of the stuff, there. Some of the, just a range of stuff. You know, gold, metals, ties, artifacts. I mean, I'm after everything. Or an image of everything, in many cases, an image of everything. I think you're just to use your photographs. But you know, all these things taken together does provide a kind of a timeline of individuals. And these are all the, I'll get it. I think that's it. Anyway, I thought it would be useful to look at a few of those to see kind of what's in there. And the way I kind of think of it is that as we've evolved the project, you have a database, which is in fact your memory, or we're using, I'll say memics here, which is you've got all of them, your mail, books, all of the things that you can store easily. You've got all these social aspects that are now into the cloud, that is Facebook, various conversations, a lot of financial transactions. A friend of mine said, gee, his best record of his life is to go into money. He was fanatic about capturing everything he spent, including all of his personal expenses. So if you want to know his life, you know, how much he paid for a pair of jeans or bought at a given point. Health, certainly personal health records, I think, is the big deal here. We continually seem to be a decade away from getting there. I certainly have captured most of mine just to see what it's all about. And then you've got all of these, the simple stuff, the photos and the like. So the database is really, I call that's really the memory. What I think of as the memory, I think of that as my e-memory, that's ground truth, and then my bio-memory is really URLs and metadata into ground truth. So it's a little, the real memory of me is there, not here. I just have references to that. And then around there are a whole bunch of these lives, that are family life, the work life, and the web, and all of those other things. And then at any given time, you've got a personal state, which is where you are and what you're doing, that you continually record. Everything we have, of course, we try to say goes into a database. And that was kind of that's probably the thing that was kind of the breaking, the nice point that we took on when the project got the second phase of the project. So there are really three phases of the project, which was capturing the high order past and present bits, and that was triggered by a friend of mine, Raj Reddy, who was starting the Million Book Projects, which is, I don't think it's called that name, but it's the the community thing. Yeah, Archive. Brewster Kahle, I think, has taken that over, and this is the kind of the open source version of storing all of the books. And then Google, as we see today, there were things today about making all their books that they'd been scanning available. I get in '98, that really triggered it because Raj called me and said, hey, can I have your books to scan, because we'd like some tests to see how you do it and what format and things like that. And I said, sure, Microsoft's got a lot of lawyers. If we get in any copyright problems, they can help us. Now, they would have been very unhappy at that point because they were busy elsewhere. But anyway, I didn't pay any. So all my books are actually, even one that's still in print, in print and on sale, is on the website, and the publishers have never commented on that. So we did that, and I had a paper basically about, okay, this is a good idea. That's has some interesting, and then we converted. It was about that conversion to bits, and then during the second period, it was really that we wanted to. That was putting it in the database. So this was getting it back. We decided to use database SQL to get it back, which works perfectly fine. And kind of at the end of this period was really an aha that said, what have we done? And that is that we, SQL, as we were doing it, the more and more data we took, the more it looked like what we were building was just a plain old transaction processing system for somebody's life. Every mouse click, every view of a screen, every photo that it took, that's really just life is a bunch of transactions, and you want to capture those. And so that was kind of that phase. And now that project was started, and we did. Was actually the project stopped at that officially. I wanted to get serious about this because I thought it had a huge value. We started up the thing, and then Microsoft. We decided, in a sense, that we were too far ahead of the products, and we ended up deciding that we would write a book, because we could write a book a lot faster than we could do the research about what it should be. And so that was really the next aha, which is, this is being able to capture it, this is being able to get it back, and this is really, what is it that's this is all about? And we basically concluded that it was a memory augmentation or supplement device. One of our colleagues in the UK, I know, always goes out of her way to comment of, this is not a substitute for memory, whereas we say, yes, it's a substitute, that we're doing everything we can to make that a tool. And so we thought this was, again, the right period to talk about memics. And what we wanted to do was both update the idea of memics was 1945. So the project was, we basically, how do you scan all that data? I didn't do it. I hired an assistant, and who still works for me and does everything else. But anyway, we decided to scan all that. In 1945, you're probably familiar with Vannevar Bush's, in fact, his papers they're probably not here, they're probably at MIT, but MEMX, which is a device which records everything for a scientist. And he envisioned a kind of little desk here. This was from a Life magazine article and an Atlantic article on this, and they kind of envisioned a microfiche and microfilm reader that would have all of the stuff that you'd use. And in fact, to a large extent, we've built MEMX. That was our kind of our goal. Of course, there are a few things that it still doesn't do that MEMX wanted to do, and that is speech to text is an important part of that. I think is really critical for a full MEMX and full memory augmentation device. But I'm now convinced that either that will come or could come if we had to do that. So at that point we went on beyond paper. Here's a typical timeline of being able to do a search topic and then looking at the density of photographs at a time. This happened to be from my son, and there's a big blank period of 20 years, and then now there are a whole bunch of pictures of grandchildren. So he was the first child, and so you get this big black line. His sister, of course, has very few photographs. And so you get all of that from that. Capture in even more. So it became a challenge of how much could we capture. It wasn't could, it was, we tried capturing basically everything at various times, because the issue was not so much capture, was it of any value? Because we come out, even though I'm in the research group, I come at things pretty much because of my background, strongly an engineer. Is it any good? Can Microsoft make money out of it? I mean, I want the company to be successful and all that. And so, and then 2003, we got a device called the SenseCam, which was a device that here it is, which it would record a photo every 20 seconds. And so you walk, it has a record of everything it sees. It doesn't have audio, and it still doesn't have audio. I carried an audio recorder because all of the information in a day-to-day whatever or an event is really mostly contained in the audio channel, and I've been unsuccessful in getting the audio channel there. But I can see this device. I can really literally see how such a device could be made and be useful. I don't particularly think the device was useful when people said, "Where's your camera?" And I said, "Well, I've got a few, I've got 100,000 photos. That's enough for me." Now, we've got some people who swear by this, and they've got 3 million. They have their life there. There's a guy in Dublin that's been wearing it kind of for the last 5 years, and I think he gets about 800,000 a year, 800,000 photos a year. And in fact, it's beginning to look like it could be very useful. Audio, if he had audio, it would be very useful. But in fact, he can get a lot about looking at from his day, and when you've got that many photographs, you can then mine them across different things and find out and use it. You can get an image of really what were your various days like, and what did you really do. But from my point of view, it wasn't something I thought we should do forever. This is a thing called Vibe, which is part of that we incorporated, and that is that this starts with every mouse click and every screenshot, so it knows what's going on the screen and how much activity is there. So this is something that people who are at the computer would, of course, hate to have to deal with. I mean, particularly if you're looked at by anybody else. So, what did you do? Well, I was, making an appointment or this tells exactly what's going on hour by hour. Once we got the GPS started coming in, and this is about in 2004, we then started using really GPS to make trails of what did you do on time. So GPS was very good, and this was in Australia, where I live half time, and so this was coming out going over to the zoo and all the points along the way, and then looking at a particular point and finding, they were doing lawn bowling there or whatever. But this is, we found that to be very, very useful. So GPS on cameras, wow, that's really, really important, and saves this problem of where was that picture taken problem, and then if you fuse that with a good calendar, then you know kind of what's going on, and you may even know who's in the photo, and so you can imply so much by having a GPS and camera. And now the sort of point and shoot, Samsung has one now that is a point and shoot camera that has a GPS in it. And then of course yourself, and you can argue whether that is relevant or not, because cell phones, smartphones are all getting GPS in them, and they're starting to put good lenses on them. So maybe the camera disappears, or certainly the point and shoot cameras may in fact go. This is in Sydney. This is just if you wear I tend to wear the unit from time to time. This is my GPS unit of what did I do? And in fact, it's nice to have all these little trails of that was a walk coming out of, I live right there, and then sort of walking through this great botanic garden and then around and then back. I didn't do this, but Debroy at MIT has microphones and video in his home, and he did that he's doing it. I think he's still doing it, but he did it for the first 3 years of a newborn's life to try to understand how the development of vocabulary and I think it was vocabulary and learning in his new child. His wife is a linguist. So we decided that the epiphany was that it really was about a personal transaction processing system, and that was then one of the other applications is this was taken just before I was going into through a bypass. Some shots around. This was tracking cholesterol over, going back and looking at my health record, and when started using chemistry to solve problems of cholesterol. And then this is a particularly interesting device, which is which of all the devices I've had, this is probably the one I really would like to have done right. This is a thing called a Bodybug. You wear it on your wrist. It measures the heat flux. It measures skin resistivity. This particular one measured heart rate. So it has an accelerometer, so it makes a really good guess about what your caloric output is for a day, and also exertion, stress, all of those other things. It's worn like that. The newer one's smaller than that. I get a lot of information because I got a pacemaker, and there's about 3 billion beats I've decided in a lifetime. There's the theory that that's a fine. We all have the same number, and so it's how you. It doesn't. But anyway, after looking at it, every time I have a checkup, why I get this plot, which this plot has changed all the time. And I said, you guys, you're missing a wonderful opportunity. This distribution changes every time. What's happening? Tell me about this. What are you getting out of the fact that these differences come in? What's my distribution look like? Am I getting healthier or worse or what? And of course, all they care about is, oh yeah, the heart's still beating. But the important number, actually the big number that I always looked at was, what's the battery life? And now I've got my second one in, which is a 10-year battery, and I figure something else is going to expire about the same time as the battery does. So whether I have to have a third one or not, it would be nice or not nice to have at that point. And so this cartoon is, if you did it right, this could be really right. It would take and I can see a device that you can build that would be very nice and useful overall. This is a thing that, kind of a nice shot of, this is, in terms of application, this is a shot of a device that people are building in the UK. They're going to put these in homes, and they're going to allow people to plonk in a bunch of their photos, and that's going to be the way they look at it. So you've got a timeline there, and so I'm giving a talk in England, and so I thought I would try their device out and use it. It's a fairly nice device. There's a special purpose device. Mine just runs on my computer, but it's a nice timeline. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then it's the timeline. You can sort of squish anything or look at any like here there were a 2-week period. I had 30 images, and so you can put any amount of stuff in there. So this is kind of what it looked like in 2005. We imported files. We had text annotation. We have voice annotation. Voice annotation being very, very important if you could absolutely annotate everything. I mean, I think if you could annotate all the documents, voice annotate all of Lincoln could have annotated what he was thinking at the time. Still, I don't think people these are still not getting a lot of voice, but it certainly deals with the importance of it. We decided that every web page that we looked at was important. All your instant messaging, of course, the mail being the big thing, because with most of us, the communication is now virtually all through mail. I connected and ran it with a telephone for about 4 years, which you have to have, of course, permission to do that when you record. I think in the 4 years I used it maybe 4 times of recall. So I kind of concluded that it wasn't that useful to have voice telephonic recording. There are times when you do want it. So I actually do have a telephone recorder that I can record when But our telephone system, actually, the telephone system we now have is all IP based, and in fact, the telephone system I have is, for a long time, I had no telephone on it. It was all through computer. That's within Microsoft. I think this is the way to go. Getting rid of telephones. I mean, I think we're going to get rid of them in this kind of funny sense that they're all going to be replaced by digital media, and so you can record as much of that as you want or not. But I'm certainly enjoying that phase of the elimination of the phone, because it's wherever my computer is, and I'm just sitting there, and it sort of rings, and I can deal with it or not. We then also did a lot of recording of TV. Radio to me is very useful. But no, to the exception, NPR does it a little bit, but that's about the only place where you get recordings. And then Vibe. And strangely, one of the killer apps, people said, what is the killer app? I said, it may be Screensaver. You know, just being able to have that thing refresh your memory all the time is what is the application? Actually, the killer app for me is actually search, being able to go back and pull any document or recall who was in that meeting, what, reminding. My whole life is really driven by, pretty much by all of the recollection down in this part. But certainly the enjoyment is sort of seeing these pictures come up from a long time ago that refreshes my memory about those. SenseCam was added, and then Vibe, this logging program I described, and then room capture. We had a room capture device, being able to capture, go into a meeting, to somebody's blackboard and turn it on or have it on all the time. All of these things get very obtrusive in turn, and if you take them the wrong way, particularly if you're, it's what you're doing with them. These are all the kinds of things that you record, and so I tried to put what I'm recording, what was experimental, and what you really need. And there, in terms of, we went down, for a year or so, I went down the Ranganathan path. I became a lover of facets and said, what do we have in there? And it turns out there are about 250 different kinds of data types when you get into a greeting card, a grade card, or business card, all of these things that are distinguishable either by the format or by form. And one of the things that, and we sponsored some research in terms of, gee, please identify all these document types, because document types are what you look at. And so there are 188 here, I guess, and we have different audio and other formats, but did that. Can have these wonderful classifications. I have a lot of fish and a lot of computer photographs, and so I have those are nice taxonomies to use to characterize stuff. Overall, we have not very. I don't have that much information, and the reason is all of the space really has to do with how much video you have, and so pictures and video take up a lot. Audio, of course, takes up some too, but text and normal computer communication doesn't require a lot. I collect about 1 gigabyte a month now, which is, the project started out on the basis when in 2001 or so we said, gee, we need to do this because we'll have a terabyte in another few years, and a terabyte is enough to store a person's life. And it turns out that's still okay, but the life is a pretty low resolution life. A higher resolution life would be maybe 10 terabytes, and a really high fidelity one, of course, is probably maybe 100 terabytes. But it all depends on how good you want the resolution of your photograph, of the video you take to be. That drives everything else. But if you throw out if you can deal with crummy video or the sampled photos that we had of using the SenseCam and audio and sampled audio, you can 10 terabytes is about the right number to get a pretty good to get a nice resolution of somebody's life. This is a picture of our book cover that we use. I had some interesting stories here. I went to look at some other people doing things. Charles Vest at MIT, I was having lunch with him, and we were talking about the project. And so basically he said, yeah, this is right. When I left MIT, I gave them my legacy was to give them my hard drive. I deleted a few things, but then that were really personal, but everything else was there. Now the regret there is, and I don't know how we would have dealt with that, is, I don't know if it's a regret or not, but it doesn't have the other channel. It doesn't have the letters coming in. What was he responding to at the time? So this is only his life as a receiver, transmitter of things, and you can't tell what the whole story is, because you really do want those other things too. So he didn't do everything, but it was a kind of a good. One of the best sites out there is the Einstein Archive, and it's got virtually everything out there. Alan Newell, when we were starting this, we looked at, this was at Carnegie Mellon, and I worked with Alan and wrote a book with Alan in '71, and Carnegie was doing experiments with that, and they had basically, to a certain extent, organized things in terms of a little bit like lives, but it was the projects were kind of lives. The one that I find interesting is that 30 of their kind of Nobel Prize-winning level people that they've captured take 265 gigabytes, and so that's kind of where I had helped arrive at the 10 gig per person. Josh Letterberg, who I knew, was I looked at his and what was in there, and then I looked at what was not likely to be digital, and school records and summaries. These were things that are hard to encode, a notebook or notes, but you can. And so frankly, all of my notebooks, my quote analog notebooks, I have drawings and things like that. Anyway, I think MyLifeBits, we had 185 content types. So these guys really don't have much of their life in their personal lives are not there. Their professional lives are there. None of the personal professional lives, that is a comment about a colleague getting tenure or anything. None of that's in there. So those are all very kind of limited view of these people. As you go forward, I think the digital people will be much more of their life will be there, because it's too hard to get it out of there. When I was doing some work initially, and people found out I was doing these, and they talked to Jim Gray, and Jim said, "Hey, yeah, you can have all of Jim's, you can have all of Gordon's material," and the guys I work with who had access to all this said, "No, you can't have it. No, none of that you want out." This is, I think, the most fascinating one going, and this is a picture of the screen at Emory. This is the rumor was that for $2 million they got for emulated Macs, 18 gigabytes, 40,000 files. This is the emulated environment, but basically they have an emulated Mac that they can pull up, so they can look at what Rushdie was looking at any any point in time. So you can go there and be like what he was doing or look at the files he had at that particular point in time. Which is an interesting thing. They went much further than I perhaps would have gone, but I think that just says you have to emulate all these different environments at various snapshotting times, which is fairly expensive. This is a guy, when I started the project, found out about it, a guy by the name of Mark Stewart in the UK. He decided to do it, and he did it right. He really concentrated on his life. In a way, I didn't concentrate on my life. I concentrated on stuff that could do a life. I was interested in exploring, is this thing any good? Mark had done beautiful hypertext link kinds of life, and it was really a personal life. And he has these life periods and did some very nice. He lives near Manchester. Here's his family tree, better than most. And anyway, that's one of the interesting things was a recent comment in NPR about people, how they trust, and I think whether you were referenced here or not, I think it was, he was, yeah, you were considering, that's what, so basically he didn't want his life to go into cardboard boxes or something, or into a freezer somewhere, and so he decided to make zillions of CDs and give them out to everybody, which means that all of those CDs will have disappeared in probably 30 years, because all the people who got them passed them on to their children, and the children start cleaning their archives out. They say, who the hell is this guy? It has nothing to do with our family. Out it goes. And so so much of people's lives go out, those boxes, those personal boxes go out, because you just I know my colleague Jim Gray, who himself had disappeared 3 years ago, had told me about where he's dealing with his mother, and he said, I went over there, and after 4 hours, my filter was just on what's important to save, just got so narrow that basically it almost all went out. So, and I'm kind of assuming, fortunately my mother had saved a lot of things, and I ended up scanning a lot of them, like a lot of particularly interesting health records. This is a thing that I was interested in 2001 of really trying to convince ourselves to make a cyber museum versus a physical museum and now we are now a massive cyber museum, and we're going to be the exhibits are coming out. Sure, I was at the warehouse the other day, and this is the artifact, which is, we started, all right, Ken Olson and I at DEC started this really in competition with the Smithsonian. I used to come to Washington for academy meetings in the 70s, and I said, they can't possibly, first off, they don't care about computers, and then secondly, even if they care, they can't get the budget, and there's no one here who knows about them. We've got to start a museum, and so this is the result of competing with the Smithsonian. And we have about 20 times the collection, the number of artifacts at this point. I think we have the most in the world. Some of the stuff, some robots, and then we've got a lot. We've got 18,000. To you, virtually nothing. 18 million pages or so of stuff, and we all believe that in fact, if we don't scan this stuff, it doesn't matter. It's gone. It's real. It's ancient history, never to be discovered except by a few archaeologists. So again, repeating that, what about 21st century people? We've got a lot of data about them. One of the things I don't know what to deal with, how there's a big question of ownership. All of this to me looks like a lot of noise, but in fact, certainly it's there. I mean, some people, I think you're recording that. I think that's pure gold. All the Twitter stuff. I think some of these institutions who do this put it on them that they agreed that they're going to keep the collections, and that when they go out of business, why or whatever, why that you have access to it. This was a UC San Diego person that we've been talking with, and that sort of information consumption. I think those were in, I can't read this anymore. Megabyte, yeah, how much is it? And so this was a lot of things, whether you record gaming and video, these things swamp everything else out. Traditional TV, all of those are big as opposed to even internet, and that is a relatively small amount. That's on a per month basis. This is going back to the autobiographical memory of keeping any. So which of your lives you capture, and you've got, family up at the top, you've got clubs, you've got educational, and then all the work. You got to what degree, that is, what are you, what's being used, what kinds of things are you doing? That's everything from office life to sort of personal life, and how much that means, and how much of these other things do you record. And then finally, this other dimension is where, as we started the project, we had the little mimics idea, the little idea of mimics, which was a desk. I can deal with a desk. That's a PC, and that's all there. But now that's not where the information is. It's all, you go out in the cloud, and there's so much there. Yeah, let's stop. Yeah, let's take some questions. Good. That's I'm essentially there. Yeah, go. Well, first off, we've made the assumption that the amount of time we're spending on this is essentially zero. That was the number that we started with, because if you can't do it as you're living your life, why, it doesn't count, because no one is going to do with that, with a few exceptions. I go out of my way to label photos because they truly are lost if you don't. We can do faces, but all the other stuff. Now, someday, that'll all get automatic. to the point of redundancy, you've got to make sure that you've got copied, that you do proper backup. And
that takes you out of zero equation.
it takes you out of zero, but it's not very big. That is in fact, you can make, I'll have to say, I should make it zero, have that done automatically, but I'm not. I do that every few months. Why, Vicki and I sync our computers together. She's off doing things. I think she's actually always automatically kept up to her. She's always up to date or she's automatically backed up all the time. I'm not. There's some stuff I have that's only one copy. Yeah.
Could you address issues of backwards and forwards compatibility with this MLB and also interoperability with major GIS systems and whether QR coding as embedded metadata is addressed?
Okay. In terms of what we went to sort of kind of the idea of a small number of golden formats of media. We believe that these, for example, money or Quicken 2007 or that, those things are all going to go. You won't be able to read those in 20 years. So we drive all of those things back to the transaction. They have a transaction themselves. So any weird databases. Our system was on SQL. That's not, none of that's I still use it. I'm using I'm using another system, System 7, but we made sure that basically we use the file folder structure that's part of Microsoft or Mac or whoever. So we just use that. Metadata, you start using, once you cross into the real significant metadata area, then you have to have a place for that. I'm a fan of, please try to evolve any file system you can, or I'm sorry, any format you can, basically JPEGs and Word docs or whatever, to have metadata in it. I want it to be with it. I hate the idea of a database and a key, I just don't fully trust. They can get separated. So I like to have as much. So the way I started out, Jim Gray, who's the inventor of the relational database, among other things, was, Gordon, you've got to put this in a database. And I said, I'm not going to put it in my first project up until 2001. I'm not going to put this in a database. First off, I don't know what the columns are at this point, how much I should put in. I looked, use Dublin Core. And I knew that I didn't, and by the way, the museum goes through all the things. We're having this argument with the museum right now, Dublin Core, and I say, well, it costs, you've got these little rinky-dink documents, and it's costing, 2 times more to coreize that, and why bother? I'm not quite the radical of we can all do it a la Google and search, but in fact I am pretty much to that camp of we've got to be able to read these documents. Computers have to be able to read the documents. We've shown in our stuff that we can read the documents and get metadata and deduce. Well, that was a letter. That's a bill, that's a will, those kinds of things. The documents are so self-describing. So even though we had all of the different document types and things like that, we really we didn't go to the extreme in terms of I love the idea of having wonderful metadata. I love, you know, the facets. I mean, facets are wonderful. Making facets, creating the facet dimensions, that's an art. That's really complicated. We went off on that and I never got to the point. We had a faceted scheme. We have some demos where it's used in places where you'd think it could be used, you know, on things that are more like taxonomies, and it is indeed wonderful, and you'd like to have all of that stuff, but basically I rely on search to find things. Yeah.
You were talking about your friend who was going through his mother's
Yeah,
things and
Jim
the
Gray.
filter that was. What makes you think that your son or your grandchildren, when they go through your
Digital.
Memex, that they're going to not do a similar filter or even more severe filter?
Well, it'll be easier for them. They can just throw the whole disk away. they can delete the whole thing.
And why would you think that that would be a good thing to do?
I don't know. I'm talking about human nature of whether it's good or bad on them. I'm just talking about the.
I mean, but to lose the data,
Well,
so that somebody else might.
Well, one of the advantages the way I've gone, I've got 4 grandchildren. So everybody's going to get a copy of it. So instead of the issue that was a very divisive thing in I watched my father, and they were, you know, they weren't that religious, but there was one Bible that they all argued about, and you know, I don't think any of them had ever cracked the Bible anyway, and so why? They were all wanted.
So they'll all get equal.
Yeah, and it turned out I ended up getting, I think the oldest grandson at one point, I ended up getting an absolutely gorgeous blanket that had been used to go from the east to Missouri. I think so my claim is that I will have more immortality. I have the potential for more immortality. Now, the biggest problem I worry about on my own immortality is that I haven't got enough structure on top of it that's going to enable you to have stories and lives in there. So that means you really got to make these stories that are in fact, and it's probably got to be in fact, all these finders where you're going looking at Einstein or whatever, there's a kind of you've got to have that structure in there. And so I know I'll have to have some structure there. Otherwise, you go into my folders and you can see these various lives, and they can go do things, and they will be most interested in their own parts of their lives that intersect mine. So, but I like the idea of I do have the multiple that you can reach an immortality with that, and then if that stuff all goes in the cloud, which I would think in a decade I'd be comfortable, it all goes into kind of a family crypt or something like that, that you've got, that you can actually go in there and have as much family data as you want and allow access to it or not. But I think that will be available. Already there's media out there. In fact, when we started the project, there's cemetery.com talked to me and all these places. But yeah, at some point you want that. And there are sites that in fact use that for kind of immortality. One of the things I'm doing now is I'm making a cyber twin that you can talk to that has a lot of facts, and you know, you converse with it. Converse is the wrong word.
But that's certainly not zero input. You're putting a lot of time and
Oh,
energy.
that's to make it really work, it's got to be totally handcrafted, but it shouldn't be. And so I can lay all these problems on my friends in the computer science community. They need work to do.
I see.
They need interesting projects, and I look at that as a kind of an interesting project. Okay, how do you go and make, how do you take something like this, or and make stories out. In fact, one of the projects that we had early on was a thing called interactive story by query. So you make a query, and that creates all the essential documents or items that you would have to tell a story with. And that getting, it isn't the metadata, it's really going above the metadata. Getting from a people standpoint is sort of it's making interesting stories, whether it's about even a single photograph or whatever, anything around that. I mean, like the fact that you have all these stories now that are being created around the Gettysburg Address draft. I mean, zillions of stories there. But in the aggregate, for people, it's just like these guys in the UK. They're trying to make that. They're going to put this little box, this memories box out, which is to a number of families in the UK, and try to see how that they react to being able to look at their lives in this sort of timeline. You know, I can kind of see that, but it's and that, because that in my own case, I was just trying. I'm thinking about that too in terms of, well, how do you show one of these? Yeah, how do you show these live? Yeah.
As you've been capturing the context of your life, you know, in terms of, you know, wearing the sensor around, interacting with other people, digitizing documents that you've received, what sort of privacy complaints have you heard, or have you heard any?
Well, I haven't, because those, for example, all of the I mean, more than half the emails are not mine. I think they're kind of owned by the person who sent them.
But has anyone said to you, don't keep my stuff, don't take my picture, don't?
No, on pictures, no. In fact, for whatever reason, people have not yet, you know, there's a kind of private, I don't know what the law is here on, you're in public place, I end up with lots of pictures of people. But for example, the guys in the UK who I was trying to get the audio on said, no, audio is too private. The pictures, because to me it was like, well, I really want it from my brain. I want to remember what that was. I want to be able to recall a conversation. The picture's not going to do anything for me there. But we really haven't run into that, and certainly I feel very strongly that you can't, that data, that stuff was not shareable. I mean, what happened to the swimmer, somebody who took that, I mean, that was unconscionable of I mean, that ruined a piece of his life. I mean, he'll recover from it, but they hadn't taken pictures of anybody else and putting them on the web. I mean, that's even photographers doing it. So that's why we don't advocate putting much of your life on the web at all. Just seen too little upside. I mean, and there was two crazy sites put every transaction that you've got. There's actually 2 sites out there that have just started about every damn purchase you made that's now on there, and that's all mineable in some way. And then about a month after that, it was like somebody used that to, one of the credit cards had left some bits on it, and they were able to scam the guy's identity. And so it was like, well, what's the, because I go back and look at these things as value, who's the value for, and if you're going to give up all this stuff, how much are you getting in, you know, what's the price, why are you doing this? Because I think the risks are so, people are so damn prejudiced. It doesn't matter, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm so damn prejudiced, you know, in terms of, doesn't matter what, there's some, you know, and even when you have these people who have opinions on whatever, and it's going to, and no matter what it is, you know, I don't like that color green, you know, that bad, you know, you get a bias or something like that, and there's no reason to do it. Anyway, yeah.
What values have you experienced so far from having this kind of record available to you?
Well, I think the big instantaneous value every hour is how much do you go back and how far do you go back to get something, and that's referencing, whether it's referencing a collected somebody that you want to recall to make a connection or to make an email or something, going that way to, you know, or I'm giving a talk or something like that, and I want to find a document. For example, I gave a talk. I was able to introduce Bill Gates at a function, and so I actually I said, you know, Bill, we had our first meeting was in 1983 when we were building the first prototype of the computer history. We had dinner, and I was almost sure I knew what, because there were a few of us there, and I was almost sure what we had. And afterward he said, yeah, I remember that was a lobster dinner and you had a very interesting sauce for that. So you're talking about somebody who could, but I had the date in you know, it was actually on a handwritten calendar. I knew roughly where it was. I had to search for it. You know, or I was giving a commencement address to CMU 2 or 3 years ago, and I was really, oh God, I got to find, what can I do? And I found something that turned out to be a key to, turned out, I think, a really good talk that I made, that I was able to use from that. So it's everything from sort of general reference, you know, going back, and now I think it's even going to be more valuable because all of the journals are now online, and in my case they're all on my hard drive. I mean, the recent ones, you know, I take about 4 that I keep, you know, ACM and, you know, IEEE and so on. And so I keep all those subscriptions on there, mainly because the issue is not that the stuff's available in digital form. It's the fact that it's in my memory. The fact that I have a memory, I have a URL to it in my head. It's, you know, if it's not in my metadata base, why it's gone. Then it's in this seed. You know, doing a Google search and finding out that there were 5 million hits is not the same as knowing that I have the document in my own database and then just going and spending whatever it takes. You know, I typically, I won't spend more than 5 minutes usually looking for something, or I don't have to if it's really want it bad. I've spent more time than that, but it's there. But and I feel the same way about books now. I've gotten rid of books. I scanned 300. I'd gotten rid of most. This was what was around, and I gave particularly things that are referenced, because my interest in sort of computer history, I want where you got all these facts, and you just need to be able to get at those. And I'm loving it. The fact that it's there.
One thing I think about is there's a basic rule that when you monitor things, you affect them. So have you changed your own behaviors in any way, knowing that everything that you're saying and doing is being monitored by yourself?
No, I don't look and see, gee, how's this going to show up on my time card? Yeah, because my time, my time card isn't reported yet. That would be a, in principle, that could be like, my boss could say, I know what you were doing by the way, I just got an iPad, or I didn't get the iPad. My wife got an iPad, a couple days ago, and she said, here, you have to have it. And I said, I wasn't going to get one of those things, and I was going to wait for you to debug it. She said, here, take it. I want you to try it. And it's...
I was just curious, part of this research, you looked at the historical aspect, and as we move forward with technology, it becomes more convenient, everybody becomes easier to use. But prior to this, people would tape recorders, which we find good, or diaries before that.
Yeah.
And it's obviously not convenient or realistic, but
Well, I take the attitude that, first off, the computer's got to know as much as it can know. And, our losses turn out to be when Vicki, my assistant, will write something on scribble on a paper. Don't ever put anything on a piece of paper. It's a phone number that if you use it once, there's a good chance you use it again. Now, and you maybe only use it twice, that's okay. But at least the computer can help you. I'm there. You've got to tell the computer everything so that, in fact, it can be used for retrieval. And every time I don't do that, I'm just, why didn't I put that person who was... and then I put as much metadata in. I mean, I believe in metadata. I don't believe in spending a lot of time on it. I'm unwilling to do that. Sometimes you get all these business cards. I scan all the business cards. Rarely do I ever, but twice a year I will look, because I knew they're not in I know they have a business card, but I don't know anything else about them, and I will actually go back and look through just to find somebody that I want to get their identity or name.
Thank you very much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.